My parents gave me a trip for my 18th birthday, but when I came back, the house was empty, and they told me I was old enough to live on my own. When I turned 18, my parents gave me what seemed like an amazing birthday gift, a weekend getaway with all expenses paid. It wasn't anything fancy, just a trip to a nearby city with a hotel stay, but at the time, I was so grateful. It felt like a final celebration of my childhood before entering adulthood. I had no reason to suspect anything was wrong, but when I returned home, everything was gone. The furniture, the clothes, all my belongings had vanished. My key didn't work. There was a for sale sign in front, and I just stood there wondering what had happened, because I'd only been gone for a few days. The first thing I thought was that maybe I had the wrong address, but no, the address was correct, and I was standing in front of the house where I had been living. I tried calling my parents, but their numbers were disconnected. I had nothing but a backpack of clothes for the weekend and a cell phone that was running out of battery. Finally, I managed to contact an aunt who explained what had happened. My parents had been planning it for months. They put the house up for sale, took everything they wanted, and left me behind. They moved to another state without leaving an address. When I eventually located them through distant relatives, you know what they told me? That they had already done their part by raising me for 18 years, and now it was my turn to be an adult. They acted like it was normal to leave without telling me anything. To them, since I was legally an adult, I should just figure it out on my own. I was homeless, alone, with no savings, no support system, nothing, abandoned overnight. The least they could have done was tell me in advance. I wasn't ungrateful or lazy. I had part-time jobs and had been helping around the house. I was diligent in school, I did my chores, I always did my part to be a good daughter. I never took things for granted, and I was always grateful. I wasn't spoiled. I didn't expect to be supported. I was willing to work and move out when I turned 18. How hard was it to just tell me? It deeply disturbed me how they thought they were right, and that I was ungrateful for even questioning their decisions. They were so cruel, but they didn't care anymore because they were far away. It took me years to get out of the hole they threw me into. I worked multiple jobs, slept on friends' couches, and many times in my car when I had nowhere to go. Despite everything, I was able to study at a university, and although it took me longer than others, I did the best I could with the cards I was dealt, a life they never thought I could achieve. Now, I'm 36 years old, happily married to my wonderful husband, Samuel. We have a beautiful 1-year-old son, Oliver, and I have a career that allows me to have my own roof over my head. I got to this point without the help of my parents, or I would even say I did it despite my parents. And suddenly, my mother appears after 18 years of silence, not even wanting to apologize. She acted like nothing had happened, just a casual message to ask how I had been all this time, along with another saying that she and my father would be delighted to meet their grandson. As much as they acted normal, like someone connecting with an old friend, they are the same people who abandoned me exactly 18 years ago. I didn't respond to them because, well, I don't think they deserve a response, and I have nothing to respond to. They want to meet my son, whom they call their grandson, but I don't think they are his grandparents. They are just the people who lived with me until I was 18 because the law required it. But that was all. I told Samuel about the message, and he was furious for me. He told me that I don't owe them anything. For Samuel, they don't deserve to see our son, and there's nothing good about them entering his life. If you're a parent, you'll understand. Something my parents weren't with me. You don't want your children to be around unpleasant people or people who could harm them. So this is my story of horrible parents and their attempt to come back into my life. Update 1. I thought that was it because a normal person, when you don't respond to their message, gets the hint that you care very little. But narcissists with a sense of entitlement like my parents are anything but normal people. They are okay with being silent with me for years to come back whenever they feel like it. It doesn't work like that unless your brain is like a Karen or Kevin's. My husband and I had made the decision not to respond, not even to tell them no, because these are in dear dom deserve that, and not responding should be enough as a response, but it wasn't for these people. It's an invitation to get back into my life without being invited. They continued sending messages. At first, it was just my mother sending messages. They were casual and suspiciously sweet. She acted as if she had simply lost contact for a while, not as if she and my father had abandoned me at 18 with nothing. She asked how I was, how my husband was, and gushed about being a grandmother. She sent me old baby photos of me, probably trying to appeal to my emotions. I left them unread. Then, the messages started arriving more frequently. The tone changed from casual to confused. She wanted to know why I wasn't responding and repeated things like, "We just want to see our grandson. You can't ignore your own family forever." After a few days, she stopped sending messages, and we thought that was it. But my father joined in. He wasn't interested in pretending to be sweet. He was frustrated from the first message. He told me that I was being immature and that whatever was bothering me happened a long time ago, and it was time to get over it. The text messages and calls became constant. Every time I ignored one, another would arrive, and if I blocked a number, they would use a new one. Then, one day, they escalated to a direct threat. The last message from my mother said that if I didn't allow them to see their grandson, they would be forced to take action. According to them, they had rights as grandparents and were going to take all possible legal options to enforce them, whether I liked it or not. I could make this easy and let them see my son, or they would have to take the hard way. To me, to show me good manners, I didn't respond to that either because it was absurd. They came back with something worse. They wrote to me from another different number saying that they were going to call Child Protective Services. They thought that not letting their grandson see his grandparents was a kind of abuse. It made me laugh to think that they were talking about abuse after what they did. Maybe it wouldn't be child abuse because I had already turned 18, but it wasn't as if they knew what it was like to be good parents. Samuel went crazy when I showed him the message. He said that if they dare to make a false report or even try to sue us for something, it won't be good for them. Not at all. I don't think it's wrong to treat parents like them this way. They have no right to anything, especially to write to me with such nonsense. I know they don't have any real case with protective services. I mean, we are good parents. Oliver is safe, loved, and well cared for. But the fact that they even made that threat tells me everything I need to know. I don't know what their ultimate goal is. Maybe they think they can intimidate me into giving in. Maybe they hope I'll panic and let them in just to avoid problems. Maybe they're just angry because I refuse to pretend that the past never happened. But here's the thing. I'm not 18 anymore, and I don't need them in my life anymore. They made very sure to teach me a lesson when they mamir are the left mir der nyaring on darkar der in Urao street. Now they're going to see the consequences. I survived without them, and I built a life without them. Now they're not necessary for anything. Maybe they realized that abandoning me to live their lives would have consequences, and now they want to get me back into theirs because their life is empty. Well, it can always be emptier if they decide to stir up the hornet's nest. We're documenting everything, every message, and every call to voicemail. If they want to play dirty, that's fine, but they have no idea who they are messing with. Update 2. A few weeks ago, they were just bombarding me with messages and threats, trying to make me feel guilty so that I would let them see Oliver, and now they have found where we live. After they threatened to call social services, Samuel and I decided to consult with a lawyer. We needed to know what our rights were and make sure we were protected in case they really tried something. We even stopped answering unknown numbers in case they tried to communicate in other ways. The lawyer reassured us that they don't have any legal basis. Grandparents' rights only apply in extreme cases, usually when there is a prior established relationship with the child. My parents haven't been in my life since I was a teenager, and certainly not in Oliver's. Still, the lawyer recommended that we stay alert. There are people who, when they realize they can't win legally, try to win through intimidation, and that's exactly what happened a few days ago. They showed up at our house. I was alone with Oliver at the time, and Samuel was at work. Since I work from home, it was just the two of us. I had just put Oliver down for his nap when I heard knocking on the door. At first I thought it was a delivery, but then the knocks became louder and more persistent. I looked through the peephole, and it was the worst parents in the world. We never gave them our address. How did they find us? Had they hired someone? Tracked down an old document? I don't know, and at that moment, honestly, it didn't matter because the only important thing was that they were there, and they didn't arrive empty-handed. My mother was holding a gift bag, probably for Oliver, another attempt at manipulation to appear like caring grandparents. My father was behind her with his arms crossed, already looking annoyed because I wasn't opening the door. I didn't open the door, or even respond, although it wasn't very difficult to know if someone was home with a car in the driveway. My mother's voice was heard through the door, sickeningly sweet. She said that they just wanted to talk, that they had come from far away to see their grandson, and that I should be reasonable. I didn't respond. I stood there with the phone in my hand, trying to decide what to do, and that's when the tone changed. The sweetness was over, and she started demanding that I let her in. It was my mother's shouts, because they had wasted their time coming all the way there, and they weren't going to leave without spending a few minutes. My father joined in the shouting, saying that the price of gas wasn't the best at the moment and that they didn't like wasting their time. Then they started hitting the door. If it weren't a little more sturdy, they could have knocked it down. I grabbed Oliver from his crib, afraid that the noise would wake him up and make him cry, which would only encourage them more. Plus, if they managed to get in, I wanted to run and lock myself in a room while I waited for the police, whom I called after holding my son in my arms. Then I called Samuel immediately, and as soon as he answered, I whispered what was happening. He was furious. He told me to lock everything, stay away from the windows, and if they didn't leave immediately, call the police, but I told him I already had. My mother's voice changed again. Suddenly, she sounded calm again, as if she hadn't been shouting seconds before. She said that they would give me one last chance to do the right thing, and let them in. That if I didn't, I was going to regret it. I shouted through the door that the police were on their way and that if they didn't leave right now, I wasn't going to drop my report. They hesitated for a moment and finally left, but not without leaving their mark. My father kicked one of our porch flower pots, shattering it against the ground. Samuel arrived shortly after and wanted to run out and look for them, but I begged him not to. We had to be smart. That same night, we made a decision. We left. We packed the essentials and went straight to my in-laws' house. We are not safe here anymore. If they found us once, they can do it again. And now that they have crossed the line into open harassment, we don't know what their next step will be. Ours was to file a police report, as well as talk to our lawyer about a restraining order. Samuel has thought about getting a gun, but I don't feel comfortable with one in the house. Hopefully the legal route will be enough and we won't have to go that far. Update. 3. It has been a week since we left our house to stay with my in-laws, and it feels safe here, or at least as safe as I can be considering the situation. There are more people in the house, and I'm not alone at any time. My husband's family has been very supportive of me and the situation, and honestly, having my brother-in-law nearby has been an extra layer of protection that my parents won't want to test. This guy is not only tall, he looks like he was taken from a celebrity private security team. If my parents get the idea to show up here, they're going to end up with their butts kicked, but my parents haven't stopped trying through other avenues. They continue with the harassment, which is good for our case. They have tried everything, calling from different numbers, sending emails, and even getting people I don't know or who shouldn't be involved in this to call me. At least I finally understand why they were so insistent on meeting my son. At first, I thought it was simply the typical sense of entitlement, believing they could come back into my life and get what they wanted, but it turns out it's something even more disgusting. I found out from a cousin that around the same time they discovered I had a son, one of my aunts had a newborn granddaughter, and that's when everything fell into place. I had forgotten how obsessed my family was with firsts. First child, first grandchild, first grandson. Everything was a competition, and now there was an opportunity to beat my aunt. They didn't want to meet Oliver because they suddenly cared about family. They wanted to parade him around as a trophy, to make sure everyone in the extended family knew that they had the first grandson, not just a grandchild in general, but a boy. I can perfectly imagine the kind of sick pride they were pursuing. My mother with an arrogant smile at family gatherings, rubbing it in my aunt's face that she had a grandson first. My father puffing out his chest as if having a grandson made him superior. That's why they are so desperate to do what they did, because narcissistic people do things like this when they believe they are in the right. I was furious, and the more I thought about it, the more old memories came back to my mind. Memories that I didn't tell because I believed that the simple fact of abandoning me was enough to paint how my parents were. I remember being a girl growing up in a house where I always felt like I was born with the wrong gender. To my parents, I was the third granddaughter, but more importantly, I was a girl, and even then, I could feel the disappointment. My parents were never openly cruel about it, but they didn't make me feel particularly wanted either. They always compared me to my older cousin, who was the first of the family. He was treated like royalty. My parents, although it was something of the whole family, every achievement of his was celebrated as if it were a national event, his first steps, a family gathering. When he started school, they called the whole family to tell them how well he was doing. I was just another girl like my cousin. I remember hearing my mother talking once with one of her sisters who had hoped to have a boy when she was pregnant with me, and suddenly a lot of things started to make sense. When they abandoned me at 18, when they sold the house and left me with nothing, I spent years trying to understand why. Yes, they are bad and selfish people, but I wanted to get to the bottom of it, but there's not much to say. They just abandoned me when they could, when it was legal, and that's all. Just for being a woman. And still, here I am, almost 2 decades later, and this disgusting tradition continues to haunt me. And even worse, now it is directed at my son. But my son is not going to be part of this tradition. We're going to make sure of that. Update 4. Months have passed since this nightmare began. It's no longer just about the harassment charges, and that alone would have been stressful enough, but my parents decided to go even further. They are trying to fight for grandparents' rights over my son. I shouldn't have been surprised with how arrogant they are. It was probably inevitable, but knowing it doesn't make it any less exhausting. My husband and I are mentally and emotionally exhausted. These last months have been an endless cycle of meetings with lawyers, submitting documents, and making sure that my parents couldn't get close to us. If you think, well, now they'll drop this and we can all resume our lives, they do something new. At this point, we don't even live in our own house anymore. We are still staying with my in-laws for safety, and although I'm incredibly grateful to them, I miss having my own space. I miss our old life with Samuel before my parents broke into it. But we have to do it because they didn't grant us the restraining order for our parents. Because according to the justice system, everything is very complicated with them now asking for grandparents' rights, and I hate that Oliver's first years are being overshadowed by this mess. I want to enjoy watching him grow without having to worry about whether my toxic parents are going to do something crazy. I don't want to live constantly paranoid, fearing that they will find another way to invade our lives. We are also suing for harassment at the same time, but it is all a big bag of legal crap that never ends. The idea was to do this to make them understand that we were not going to be intimidated by them, but instead they stopped intimidating us physically and through different means of communication to do it legally. My parents are trying to argue that I have never wanted to let them into my life, and I am doing the same with my son, that they were loving parents for 18 years, and now they can't believe that I am like this with them. It is crazy, but that is what they are using as arguments against me to wear me down. I don't think the winning strategy for them is to win here. They just want me to wear down and tell them that it is okay for them to meet him. And it seems to be working, except for the fact that although we are tired of all this, we have energy to keep fighting. My fuel is that I hate them so much for abandoning me and for what they're doing. So with that, I stay in the fight. Two can play the game of wearing the other down, and when I wear them down, I'm going for more. Update 5. It has been almost 2 years since this nightmare began, and I can finally say that we are free. We won all the cases after all. After all the stress, the threats, and the total exhaustion of fighting for our peace, we finally put an end to my parents' relentless attempts to force their way into our lives. The lawsuit to obtain grandparents' rights has been dismissed and archived, while the lawsuit for harassment has ruled in our favor, and they were ordered to pay nearly $1,000. A very high bill for a broken flower pot. But although we won, my husband and I decided that we could not take more risks. So a month ago, we packed and left the country. Now we live abroad, and honestly, it still feels unreal. We settled in my mother-in-law's home country, and luckily the transition has been relatively smooth. Samuel was lucky enough to be reassigned within his own company, and they even subsidized part of the move, which was a great help. As for my in-laws, they decided to come with us since they were already planning to retire here, and although it has been a big change, for now we are adapting well. My parents? Well, the last time I heard from them, they were still complaining. Yes, they have lowered the tone of the direct attacks a bit, probably because they know they can't afford more legal problems, but that doesn't mean they have completely stopped showing themselves as victims. But they will never find us again. Update 6. Everything has been very quiet with my parents. They haven't been able to find us in any way where we live, and I must admit that I've liked this country more than I imagined. At first, we lived in a safer neighborhood than we did before, and I don't just mean safety regarding my parents, but in general, so this change has been quite positive. I'm sorry to start with the positive and now move on to the negative aspects, because I know that can put you in a worse mood than if I had started here and left the positive for the end, but this is only negative if you are my parents, because for the rest of the people, including Samuel and me, these things feel quite positive. Remember that I told you that my parents love to compete with the family to be the first in everything? Well, they already lost the competition to have the first grandson, so my aunt, who is quite similar to them, or perhaps even worse, didn't let the opportunity pass to make fun of them during a family gathering. She kept showing her grandson over and over and asking about theirs. That lasted for a couple of hours until my mother, without warning, slapped my aunt while she was still holding the baby in her arms. My cousin and her husband had to intervene because she attacked her carrying the baby. As a result, my father also got involved and they started fighting with my cousin's husband. The meeting ended very quickly when the police arrived and took both the husband and my father into custody, and charges were filed against my mother. Since then, my parents are not invited to any family gathering, and they had to pay my aunt $800 for the slap and $24,400 to the baby's parents. My cousin told me all this a long time after it happened because she didn't know if I wanted to find out about things related to my parents, given our history, but I told her that she was crazy if she thought I wouldn't want to find out about something like that. Besides, it's very safe here, but also the most boring. You don't hear gossip like this. My parents no longer have to worry about competing within the family, and I don't have to worry about them wanting to use my son to compete because they no longer have a family.